Boeing's Starliner program has faced significant challenges, costing the company billions of dollars. The problems have continued to get worse, and the situation has been difficult for both Boeing and the aerospace industry. However, after months of delays and little progress, NASA has finally announced a date for the undocking of the spacecraft. However, there are still serious issues that could cause problems at any time. In today's episode, we'll break down all the details of the current situation and what it could mean for the future of Boeing's Starliner program. NASA recently decided that the Boeing Starliner spacecraft will return to Earth without a crew. This decision comes after significant issues, including thruster malfunctions and helium leaks, which raised concerns about the safety of a crewed return. Initially, astronauts Butch, Wilmore, and Suni were supposed to return on Starliner, but they will now return on SpaceX's Dragon Crew 9 mission in February 2025. The Starliner's uncrewed return is scheduled for September 6, 2024. The return mission will be closely monitored, with the spacecraft set to land at White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico after a 6-hour descent. This mission marks Starliner's third landing at White Sands, following 2 previous uncrewed test flights. The data gathered from this return will be crucial for engineers to analyze and address the spacecraft's issues, which will determine whether Starliner can be certified for future crewed missions to the International Space Station. The International Space Station plays a vital role in this mission. The International Space Station has been continuously occupied since November 2000, serving as a hub for international space collaboration. The station operates with a rotating crew of astronauts from the United States, Russia, Canada, Japan, and Europe, who carry out research and maintain the station. Spacecraft like the Russian Soyuz and SpaceX's Crew Dragon have been used for crew rotations. The Starliner was expected to join this lineup, but its certification has been delayed due to ongoing technical challenges. Before the undocking process begins, Starliner will conduct 2 critical thruster reboots. These reboots are essentially tests to ensure that the spacecraft's thrusters, which are vital for maneuvering and adjusting the spacecraft's position, are functioning properly. The first reboot is scheduled for the morning of September 6th, and the second will take place approximately 2 hours before the actual undocking event. The purpose of these reboots is to address previous issues Starliner has experienced with its thrusters. During its mission, the spacecraft encountered malfunctions and a helium leak, which raised concerns about its ability to return safely to Earth. It's still unclear if Boeing has fully fixed the thruster issues that have caused problems for Starliner. These ongoing issues may have influenced NASA's decision to bring the spacecraft back without astronauts. With the many challenges Starliner faces, there are concerns about whether it can return safely. Although removing the astronauts reduces some risk, the spacecraft's return is not guaranteed to be trouble-free. Starliner has at least one malfunctioning thruster, which could cause problems during the flight. Thrusters are crucial for controlling the spacecraft's orientation and trajectory during flight. If a thruster is not working properly, Starliner might not be able to maintain its correct path. This could result in the spacecraft veering off course, which would be dangerous, especially during re-entry. In addition to the thruster problem, there's also a helium leak on the spacecraft. Helium is used to pressurize the fuel tanks, which is necessary for the engines to function correctly. If the helium leak isn't controlled, it could reduce the pressure in the fuel tanks, making it difficult for the engines to operate as needed. This could lead to a situation where Starliner doesn't have enough fuel or engine power to complete its journey, particularly during the critical re-entry phase. Re-entry itself is a complex and dangerous process. The spacecraft must enter the Earth's atmosphere at precisely the right angle and speed. If the angle is too steep or too shallow, it could cause the spacecraft to burn up or skip off the atmosphere, respectively. The malfunctioning thruster and helium leak could interfere with Starliner's ability to control its descent, increasing the risk of a catastrophic outcome. Even if Starliner successfully navigates these challenges, the landing could still be problematic. If the engines fail or run out of fuel during the final approach, the landing could be much harder and more dangerous than planned. There's also the risk of the spacecraft catching fire during re-entry if the heat shield or other systems fail under the stress. This could result in severe damage to the spacecraft and a failed mission. It's also important to note that Starliner will not be landing in the ocean. Instead, it will land on a cushion in the White Sands Desert in New Mexico, and this introduces additional challenges to an already complex mission. Unlike ocean splashdowns, which provide a softer landing, desert landings require precise control to ensure the spacecraft touches down safely on a cushioned surface. This process is heavily dependent on the parachute system, which has faced issues in the past. Parachutes may seem simple, but they are critical components that must deploy correctly to slow the spacecraft's descent. Any malfunction in the parachute system can lead to a crash landing, putting the spacecraft and its mission at risk. Boeing's Starliner shares similarities in parachute design with Blue Origin's New Shepard, which experienced a parachute failure in May 2024. In that incident, the New Shepard's parachute did not fully deploy during its descent, causing the rocket to land harder than expected. Although the capsule itself was unmanned and designed to withstand such impacts, the event highlighted the dangers of parachute malfunctions. For Starliner, which carries delicate equipment and eventually crew members, a similar failure could be disastrous. The parachute system in Starliner has already caused delays in the past. Any failure during this mission could prevent the spacecraft from being recovered in good condition for analysis. With just a week left before the scheduled return, Boeing and NASA are under pressure to ensure every component, especially the parachutes, functions perfectly. Beyond the immediate concerns with Starliner's undocking, there's also a possibility of a collision between Starliner and the International Space Station, which would be catastrophic. A collision could occur if the spacecraft's thrusters malfunction, which has been a problem for Starliner in the past. During undocking, the spacecraft must slowly back away from the International Space Station and then move into a safe trajectory. If the thrusters fail to fire correctly or at the right time, Starliner could drift uncontrollably towards the International Space Station. After Starliner undocks, there will be a 20-day gap before SpaceX's Crew 9 arrives at the International Space Station. During this time, if Starliner encounters serious problems, the astronauts currently on the International Space Station could be at risk. NASA has considered the possibility of using other spacecraft like SpaceX's Dragon Crew 8 or Russia's Soyuz for a rescue operation if needed. The Dragon Crew 8 spacecraft can accommodate up to 7 astronauts, which means the 2 astronauts assigned to Starliner could potentially be evacuated if an emergency arises. If you've made it this far into the video, we've got a special surprise for you. We're offering the most realistic Falcon 9 models exclusively to our most loyal viewers and at the most affordable price. If you're still watching, it means you're truly one of our dedicated fans. So go ahead and grab your revolutionary Falcon 9 model. The link is right in the description below. Don't miss out on this limited-time offer. For months, NASA and Boeing have been trying to safely return the 2 astronauts currently aboard the International Space Station using the Starliner, but each attempt to resolve the spacecraft's technical issues has failed. The situation became increasingly dire, leading to growing concerns about the safety and reliability of the spacecraft. Finally, recognizing the gravity of the situation and the potential risks to astronaut safety, Boeing and NASA decided to set their pride aside and seek help from SpaceX, their primary competitor in the commercial crew program. SpaceX, which has successfully conducted multiple crewed missions with its Crew Dragon spacecraft, agreed to assist in bringing the astronauts back to Earth. After SpaceX accepted the request, NASA officially made the decision to return the astronauts on a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft, marking a significant shift in the dynamics between the 2 companies. The Starliner, developed as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, was intended to provide a reliable alternative to SpaceX's Crew Dragon for transporting astronauts to and from the International Space Station. In 2014, NASA awarded contracts to both Boeing and SpaceX to develop spacecraft capable of carrying astronauts to the International Space Station. The goal was to foster competition, drive innovation, and ensure that the United States had multiple options for crewed spaceflights. Boeing received $4.2 billion to develop the Starliner, while SpaceX was awarded $2.6 billion for the Crew Dragon. From the outset, the competition between Boeing and SpaceX was seen as a battle between two giants, each led by visionary leaders. While SpaceX quickly made strides with the development of the Crew Dragon, which has now completed 9 successful crewed missions, Boeing's progress with Starliner has been slow and fraught with difficulties. The Starliner's first uncrewed test flight in December 2019 ended in failure when a software glitch prevented the spacecraft from reaching the International Space Station. A second uncrewed test flight in May 2022 was more successful, but it too encountered problems, including issues with the spacecraft's thrusters. The most recent setback occurred during the Starliner's approach to the International Space Station in June 2024. NASA and Boeing engineers identified helium leaks and problems with the spacecraft's reaction control thrusters, which are critical for maneuvering in space. Despite efforts to address these issues, including additional testing and data analysis, the spacecraft has not yet met NASA's stringent safety standards for human spaceflight. As a result, NASA decided to bring the Starliner back to Earth without its crew, who will instead return on SpaceX's Crew Dragon in early 2025. What's funny about this whole situation is that SpaceX's Crew Dragon was always an available option for returning the astronauts, but Boeing and NASA acted as if there was no other choice but to rely on the Starliner. The reason behind this is pretty clear. Boeing desperately wanted to improve its already tarnished reputation by successfully bringing the astronauts back using the Starliner itself. Boeing's image has hit an all-time low in recent years. The company was supposed to finish the Starliner project years ago, yet it's been plagued with delays and technical issues. What makes it even worse is that Boeing received nearly double the funding from NASA compared to what SpaceX got for developing the Crew Dragon. Specifically, Boeing was awarded $4.2 billion, while SpaceX received $2.6 billion. Despite this significant advantage in funding, Boeing has struggled to deliver a reliable spacecraft. It's also important to remember that Boeing isn't a newcomer to the space industry. In fact, they are the oldest commercial space company, with decades of experience under their belt. Given this, one would expect Boeing to be at the forefront of innovation and reliability. However, SpaceX, a much younger company, has outpaced Boeing in almost every way. It's ironic that Boeing's Starliner not only faces technical and scheduling issues, but also comes with a much heftier price tag compared to SpaceX's Crew Dragon. Specifically, NASA is paying around $90 million per seat for Starliner, which is about 60% more expensive than the $55 million per seat cost of Crew Dragon. With all the problems that have plagued Starliner, you might wonder why NASA has continued to support Boeing's program, rather than canceling it and fully transitioning to SpaceX, which has proven more reliable. The answer lies largely in lobbying and the influence that Boeing wields in Washington. Boeing has long been a powerful player in the aerospace industry, and its connections in government have helped it secure additional funding and continued support, even when performance has lagged behind expectations. In fact, when NASA considered cutting its losses with Starliner in 2019 due to the significant delays, Boeing received an additional $287 million from NASA. This extra funding was awarded despite the fact that SpaceX was already successfully launching missions, and Boeing's justification for the higher per-seat costs and delays often involved the argument that they had to develop Starliner from scratch, unlike SpaceX, which had a head start with their Dragon cargo variant. However, this justification doesn't hold up under scrutiny. First, while SpaceX indeed leveraged its cargo Dragon experience, Boeing's claim ignores the fact that both companies were given similar timelines and opportunities under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. SpaceX started with a clean slate for the Crew Dragon, designing it specifically for human spaceflight. Moreover, Boeing, with its extensive experience in aerospace and its significant financial backing, should have been able to match or exceed SpaceX's progress. SpaceX didn't just develop another crew spacecraft, they arguably created the most reliable spacecraft ever built. SpaceX's Crew Dragon has been a remarkable success in NASA's Commercial Crew Program. The spacecraft has not only completed 9 crewed missions to the International Space Station, but has done so with an impeccable safety record. The Crew Dragon is launched by the Falcon 9 rocket, a vehicle that has revolutionized space transportation with its reusability. As of 2024, Falcon 9 has achieved over 250 successful missions, making it one of the most dependable rockets in history. Its reusability has allowed SpaceX to conduct frequent launches, often with the same booster being used multiple times, which has significantly reduced the cost of sending payloads and people into space. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.